Hey folks, back again. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. It probably isn't. It's raining here and I'm going to try and persevere and make a video. Probably a bit silly. But it's not every day you can show a eucalyptus species that in its natural habitat is considered to be threatened with extinction. This is an endangered one for New South Wales. So I think it's a cool one to make. We have species listed as threatened in New South Wales, and then they get the category of vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, or presumed extinct. This one has the category of endangered. And this is Eucalyptus macarthuri, named after the son, I think the son of John Macarthur. Is it William Macarthur, who was a good amateur botanist and had a lot of interest in native plants. I think it's named after him. It's called the Camden woolly butt or the Paddy's River box, whatever you want to call it. Goes by those two names. The bark, they're big tall trees. This one here that I'm profiling because I can get buds and fruit within easy reach doesn't really do testament to how big they are, but I'll go for a walk even though it's raining and see what we can pick up. You get a bit of a mixture of bark. It is fibrous down the bottom. It can be shortly fibrous or broadly fibrous. It can look a little bit messy. I've got these big, look at that, big huge chunks coming off. You can see we've got some lichens on it. Some of these trees, I should have said, in the Southern Highlands. I'm in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, and a lot of the trees down here get these beautiful lichens on them. Sometimes they help with the ID, but it's got a nice broad bark. This tree I'm profiling, it's got a bit of a weeping habit, but just let me show you what they can do. I'm down here near Mossvale in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, and this is where Eucalyptus macarthuri is found. At the moment I'm on this shale soil, clay soil. It's been planted across its natural range as well. I've seen them growing in sort of sandy swamps, but they're in an area called Penrose. That's sort of where Paddy's River is. But here they're growing on a clay sort of shale in our Southern Highlands shale woodlands, and they probably belong here as well. And there's about 50 to 60 trees on this patch. But it's possible they have been planted in some cases as well. But I'm assuming this is their natural habitat, and they're, you know, some of them are getting up to 30 metres tall. This one here is easily pushing 30 metres, but it's a nice big one. And again, just look at the bark down the bottom. It's pretty messy in places. And I'm going to have to stop and get the water off my phone, but I just want to persevere with this one. It's what we do as ecologists. We just keep going. It's always nice to get home cozy later with the heater on. But there's the bark. Yeah, quite beautiful. Big chunks. Just very, very variable. Messy. That's why it probably gets called a woolly butt. So just a range of bark types there. Some people think they're confusing trees because of just their general appearance. But when we zoom in on some features, which I'm about to show, I'm just going to give the phone a clean. I'm going to soldier on, folks, and hope that this rain gives me a break. It's not that heavy, but it's just really persistent. These are the juvenile leaves. Check them out. So cool. They're papery thin. There's not a lot of thickness to them. Bluey green. And they've got these sort of what we'd call maybe cordate or in plexical or definitely sessile bases where there's no hint of a petiole there. And if I can show this in the rain, they just put out these sprays, these really long sprays of this juvenile looking foliage. It's a very strong identification feature, very useful identification feature. Just these constant juvenile leaves. Really cool. Just going to put them up against the tree there. Papery thin, and they're sort of the coloration. They're sort of, I know it's wet. They're looking pretty concolorous to me, but maybe we'll look up the description and I'll add it to the video. But look, they look pretty concolorous. There's not a lot of difference there. And one of the cool things I like, that I really like, the smell. It's really distinctive. And it does vary, and that's what bothers me. Some trees, you really get a strong hit of it, and some trees you don't. But it's got a smell almost like curry. When I first started smelling them, I used to call it cinnamon. I said, it's got a real cinnamon smell, and then someone said to me, no, it's more like curry. And I had to agree with that. Yeah, I said, yeah, you're right, it is more like curry. This one, what bothers me about it is it doesn't always do it. It just doesn't always give out the strong smell. But I was smelling these guys before on another tree, and they've really got it at the time. Sometimes it's very more peppermint-like, but at other times it's very curry. And what I would suggest is smelling them when they're dry. I think when they're wet, it does have a bit of a, I've struggled to get the smell more when it's raining. Yeah, but it's a definite, like, there's a bit of peppermint there, but it's going into this definite cinnamon sort of curry smell. And that's one thing I rely on to identify. It's very spicy. And that's a real cool feature about them. Just check out this foliage here. It's going from sort of older, darker green into more bluey green up the top. And I'm always looking for this all the time with MacArthuri. Hey folks, my audio completely failed here, I guess with the rain getting into the phone. So just doing it again for this part and trying to get the timing right. I'm just going through the leaves. They're a bit on the narrow side when they're fully mature up in the canopy, but I do show some broader ones later on. But these are about 1 centimetre wide, maybe getting up to about 15 centimetres long. They look like Eucalyptus radiata a bit, and that's a radiata there in the distance. That's narrow leaf peppermint. The radiata, their leaves have a really strong peppermint smell, but they do look similar to MacArthuri, and some people get the two confused and think they're a bit similar. But just note, they generally have narrow canopies, and MacArthuri can have a very narrow canopy, especially when they're tall. The leaves were sort of on the thin side, and they're concolorous. They're totally concolorous. No hint of discoloration. And just check for the smell again, the spicy smell. Radiata has a very strong peppermint smell, incredibly strong peppermint smell. And with MacArthuri, we've got the spicy smell there. But you can get leaves up to about 2 centimetres broad, perhaps. Maybe a little bit broader than that, normally not much more. And yeah, I'm just checking the smell here, I think. I'm getting a bit of a spicy hit from it. But again, definitely better when the leaves are dry and not so wet would be the better way to go about it. Not sure if we're talking about Eucalyptus aggregata now, which is a similar species to Eucalyptus MacArthuri, but we're going to go into that one. But I think that's just showing Eucalyptus radiata. It's got a finely fibrous bark and the peppermint smelling leaves. Now the buds are in 7s. They're in crystal clear 7s for MacArthuri. That's another cool feature about it. They don't go beyond 7. They're not 7 to 15, and they don't get into that other bracket. They're in pure 7s like that. So that's one of the cool features about MacArthuri. Always look for those buds in 7s. Now the buds of radiata, they get into that 16 to 31 bracket. So they go over 15, and they've got a real heavy cluster of, 15 to 31. but MacArthuri are always in 7s. They're not always easy to find, but if you got some low branches like I got for this video, they're quite easy to get hold of. I don't normally have trouble getting hold of MacArthuri buds. Not too hard at all. And obviously the fruits, they're going to be in 7s as well. Just a bit less here because some have fallen off. They're on the small side. They're only about 5 mil across. They're not very big. So you just got to look for that. They're not very big at all. About 5 mil is the biggest I see them. They're pretty constant in their size. They've got a bit of a hemispherical cup shape. Maybe 3 to 4 valves. I'm not sure how many valves, and it might not be useful anyway, but I'd say 3 to 4. And 5 mil wide, that nice cup shape, and I see them like that pretty consistently. So I like to get hold of a total of 7, either fruits or buds, to know I've got MacArthuri, and combine it with that juvenile foliage, habitat, smell, and that's normally pretty concrete. What I started going into here was, Eucalyptus aggregator. Eucalyptus aggregator is, I think I'm showing the peduncle there as well, maybe a 1 centimetre to 15 mil peduncle. So Eucalyptus aggregator, that is a threatened species as well in New South Wales. It grows in similar habitats to MacArthuri. I forget the total geographic range, but it grows on sort of cold river flats and frost hollows and places like that. I think we call it black gum Eucalyptus aggregator or something like that. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. It is very similar to MacArthuri. It's very similar. It's got buds in 7s. It's got the same size fruit. It's a very similar looking tree. Apparently it only gets to 10 or 15 metres tall and doesn't get much taller than that. MacArthuri can get up to 40 metres. And the juvenile leaves are different. You got to look at the juvenile leaves. They are, I think, petiolate in aggregata, and they're nice and sessile without a petiole in MacArthuri. And I had one wrestle on one site with aggregator versus MacArthuri. It was really difficult to figure out what was what, and couldn't get hold of any juvenile foliage. So aggregator is one to watch out for with MacArthuri. I'm going through the geographic range here. If you're between Mittagong and Marulan, the Hume Highway, you can start finding them. MacArthuri, Mossvale, Mittagong, Bowral, Berrima, they're good places to pick them up. A lot have been planted, but that's their stomping ground. Down to Penrose at Paddy's River where they grow in sandy swamps. There's also a disjunct occurrence north of that in sort of Canangra Boyd National Park, west of Lake Burragarang, and southwest of Katoomba. I haven't seen them there, but there's a patch up that way as well. But if you're between Mittagong and Marulan and maybe both sides of the Hume Highway, but more maybe the east side, you should be able to find them and have a good look at them, especially on the roadsides around Mossvale and even near Robertson and places like that. I'm just showing some wider leaves here, 2 centimetres wide, I think. I'm saying they're in a bit of a maybe adult phase because they're coming off the end of these long branches of juvenile leaves. But you can see here they're a bit fatter, maybe 20, maybe up to maybe 25 mil. A little bit fatter there, but you can see the juvenile foliage may be behind down further, and this branch was only about 4 metres long. So maybe a bit of intermediacy in the width between juvenile leaves and adult leaves. I think that's what I was going through, probably with a bit of waffle more than likely, with the rain bucketing down. So, this is its stomping ground, the Southern Highlands, Mossvale. I think we're going back to have a look at this nice big tall one, I think. They have been planted on farms around Goulburn. I've seen them commonly planted there. It's been a bit of a farmer's favourite, Eucalyptus MacArthuri. It's been well and surely planted, and it does do well in plantings. And there's a lot of road verge trees through the Wingecarribee Shire, or what we call the Southern Highlands, especially around Berrima and Mossvale. There's a heap of trees. I'm just showing there that the upper branches go bare. And what I'm saying here is there's some records around Melbourne. There are some records around the Melbourne area and Victoria. I don't know if they're naturalisations. I'm going to assume that they are, but if anyone knows, you might be able to put a comment in. There are some Australasian virtual herbarium records around Melbourne, and there's also a heap of records in New Zealand. There's a ton of records in New Zealand. It looks like, especially the north, it looks like it might have gone feral there perhaps. But we do have possible naturalisation or at least planting in New Zealand. I'm just finishing off with this sapling over here just to get a bit more representation. But this is a 5 metre tall sapling or thereabouts. And just check out the juvenile foliage on it. Hopefully you can see that adult foliage up the top. It's sort of like what I showed before, but here's the juvenile foliage. This is a sapling and it's throwing this much juvenile foliage, and just don't really see this on too many other eucalypts. Just these, you know, what I'm calling these sprays, or really sort of heavy branches, I guess, or well foliaged branches of juvenile foliage. Yeah, it's what they do, and it makes it, you know, sort of really helps to ID them once you've seen them doing this sort of thing. But they even do it on the saplings as well. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that one. That's Eucalyptus macarthuri. Really nice tree.